Behold, the future of the Metal Detector!
In the future, the detector is gonna swing us. It's got a battery made by Elon Musk. When I blink my eyes, it will notch out rust. And all the zinc coins with the flaky white crust. I could see through the earth, keep all the stardust that fell from above in the sarcophagus known as dirt. Say a word, plant and herd, the canary in the coal mine out from under the earth. Welcome to the future where the hipsters drink kombucha, the detector drones fly, mining metal like a looter. You need the patience of a Buddha to find signal any sooner than the robots in the sky, algorithmic coin shooter. George Jetson didn't see this robot Rosie pulling Rosie's human sleeping robots going on the lawns that they are mowing. AstroTurf no longer growing, people using roofs for the planting and the sowing. Say what? Dystopian echoing, detectorist tiptoeing to the parking beaches knowing that AI is here and it's efficient and mind-blowing.
As we move into a brave new future. Futures are always brave. Is there really going to be a shy future? I beg to ask the question, what is the future of metal detecting? This video is going to look at the future of metal detectors and the objects that we metal detect. And actually, let's start with that. By the way, I wrote an entire article for you. So make sure that you head over to my website. The link is in the video description. And check that out, because some of the things that we are not going to go over in this video, they are in this article. It's a blog. Part 1. The future of the objects that we detect. Every time that I pull a piece of silver out of the ground, I'm 99% happy. 1% sad, because there is no silver fairy that is going around just like throwing silver in the air, make it rain, dropping it like he or she just doesn't care, okay? Once silver is pulled, once a historic item is pulled, it's out of the ground, and by default there is less. We do have new drops. New drops happen all the time, every year, all the time. I just dropped my GoPro. It's gone. And I got a new one. But, I'm somebody who detects. I'm very aware of the dropping that happens, yet I still lost something. And back in the day, I lost a ring too. God knows how much change I've lost over the years. But I would say the vast majority of my pulls, at least the ones that I want to pull, are coins. Are they going to be around forever? The present is fascinating and rapidly moving. The technology, the innovations that are happening are absolutely Star Trek-y, okay? Like the stuff that happened in old television shows, we're arguably beyond that in some cases. Credit card debt has risen quite a bit over the years, and if swiping a card wasn't easy enough, now we can put our phone to the cashier, to the register, or scan something, and you could use something like Apple Pay. Cryptocurrencies are being embraced. It has crashed more than 50% 5 times, but guess what? Each time it has come back. That is a sign of a market there, an alternate form of payment that is not tangible. I have like 900 extra lives in Candy Crush, and they're going to be worth something someday. I mean, you can't metal detect them, but they're gonna carry value. Oh, come on, Merrill, that's never going to last. There's no store of value there. Store of value. Yeah, we once had a store of value when we were on the gold standard, and really, beyond that, short aside, as detectorists, because they beep, we are obsessed with finding coins. That's what we do. But you know what really fascinates me? Have you ever seen the bills from gold standard era America? Now pay close attention to the bottom here. $10 in gold coin, payable to the bearer on demand. Now those of us who know what a zinc penny, a zinkin, is, and have pulled it with our metal detectors, you're going to find this next part hilarious. The Congress shall have power to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and of foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures. Oh, here we go. No state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payments of debts. That's in the frickin' Constitution! Nowadays we have what is called fiat money, which is money that was put out by a country and said this is our official currency. If they wanted to grab monopoly money and do the same, it would be the same thing. Is that tangible? Yeah, back to store of values. Have you seen a zinken? Put it in water, it turns into a blob of white. And the reason that we are using zinkens in our currency right now is because the melt value of a copper penny was worth more than 1 cent. And it didn't make sense, I suppose, pardon the pun, in order to make the penny smaller. So what they did was they made a shell, and on the inside is zinc. And you got something that represents the value of 1 cent that is cheaper than a cent to make. And the problem with the zinken for us metal detectorists, it is the death of finding something that is worth 1 penny. Now, let me explain. You take a Roman coin that has been underground for 2,000 years, copper Roman coin, okay? You compare it to a zinken that has been underground for maybe 20 to 30 years. Guess which one looks more like a new coin? Oh, I bet you 10 times out of 10, it's going to be the Roman coin that's perhaps over 2,000 years old. That's how bad zinkens last in the ground. Expose it to water, expose it to any sort of corrosive material, and it's going to be obliterated. So compared to our current store of value currencies clad in zinkens and linen for bills, are cryptocurrencies really that abstract? Couldn't you see yourself or someone taking your phone in the future, and instead of using American money, Australian, New Zealand, English, wherever you're watching from, the currency of the country, couldn't you say, okay, I'm going to use a Bitcoin or part of a Bitcoin in order to pay for something? And I know what a lot of you are thinking right now. Oh, geez, it is best to invest and hoard precious metals. And you might be right. But think about this. SpaceX right now, they are planning to mine asteroids. The technology does not exist yet, but that is very much on the radar. There could be solid gold asteroids out there, or the majority of the metal that is in an asteroid is gold or platinum. Guess what happens if that comes back to Earth? That's right, prices plummet. So there's no investment that all around can protect you. Maybe those cryptocurrencies that are on the rise, maybe that's the way of the future. What is going to happen with the coins that are tangible that we hold in our hand? Are we going to have them? Skip the next 30 seconds of this video if you don't want your heart broken, but imagine that copper-based clad coins, imagine if the price of copper goes up so much that it costs more to in copper to produce a clad quarter or a clad dime. And those two coins suddenly become zinkenized, or nickels. You know, everything gets this whole play money look. You can feel the weight difference in pennies. That would kill metal detecting right there. At least the objects, these objects that we pull. There's new objects coming all the time. For instance, I've metal detected 8 years. You know, I've seen these Apple pods, the ear pods. I found a bunch of them. I also have found the vaping devices. Those are new. Those are getting dropped all the time. So we get new stuff too, but could it be out with the old, in with the new. Question 2 on what we are going to pull in the future. Detectors have become very efficient at notching out bottle caps, notching out iron. But the result is that we don't pull iron. And bottle caps, I'm telling you, if you come to New York City and you do not see a bottle cap, you're doing something wrong. Our dirt is like 5% bottle cap, okay? It's just layer upon layer of bottle caps in some places. And it reaches a saturation point. Will the ground from the bottle caps just getting discarded and then sinkage or sodding over it, will there be so much bottle caps, littering, iron that we couldn't tell what is underneath? Yes, a metal detector can notch some of those signals out, but it does not get rid of the interference that happens with the good signal. So you can see some of it, you can get the idea that there's something else that is down there, but the ideal is to get the bottle caps out. Will we ever reach a saturation point with bottle caps that it really affects the detecting that we do, especially if the objects are more scarce? Question 3. Will the economics of keeping a field on your property prevent you from having a traditional field on your property? I see this all the time in schools. New York City schools, the ones that remain with big campuses, their baseball fields, their soccer fields, their football fields, they have AstroTurf. If you think about it, you don't have to pay for gardeners in order to maintain the grounds. And that has been all over the place. The fields that are left, just they get AstroTurf on top of them. Another thing that I've noticed is the improvement in field drainage. And sometimes that requires putting in rocks underneath the soil and better systems that pull the water down, that instead of having it pool on the surface, pulls it down. The fields that are not getting AstroTurf on top are getting these new systems, and that requires disturbing the layers of dirt that hold the history. The objects that we covet are scarce, and they are becoming more scarce by the day. But often our study of history is what survives and what we can get our hands on, what is tangible. Now, in part 2 of this video, we are going to take a look at what is on the horizon for metal detecting in the future, and what exactly will it look like, both in terms of the type of detecting that happens and who or what is doing the detecting. Part 2. The future of the metal detector. And before we go into the future, let's go over the history of metal detecting and the innovations that have happened over the years. So we get to the present, then we look at the future. Any innovation is driven by a need. In the case of the creation of a metal detector, it was derived from the assassination of a president and the effort to keep him alive. I'm going to give you the brief history right now, but there is a clip that you should definitely watch. Hit the I button. It's from CBS Sunday Morning, and 7-minute clip. It gives the full history on it. July 2nd, 1881, James Garfield was shot by a man named Charles Guiteau, and he wanted a job. It was common in the spoil system at the time. You could just show up at the White House and be like, yeah, I want a job. I know X number of people that will help you get elected. Pay me for this. Put me on your payroll staff. I have no credentials, but hey, spoil system. Long story short, that never happened. And at a train station that is now the site of the National Mall, on the National Mall, James Garfield was shot, but he did not die right away. James Garfield had a very negligent doctor by the name of William Bliss, actually D. William Bliss, and the D stood for doctor. At the time, there was no belief in the concept of bacteria. In fact, when he was shot, several doctors applied pressure with their fingers right into the wound to stop the bleeding. Oh, we get it with stopping the bleeding, but the president had all sorts of abscesses on his body, bacterial infections, and he suffered for a long time. Now, what does this have to do with metal detecting? As a last-ditch effort, William Bliss, oh my God, it's not William, it is Willard. Dr. Willard, or D.W. Bliss. That was his name. His parents named him Doctor. Like, who does that? Called upon the technological genius of the time, Alexander Graham Bell, to create a metal detector that could figure out where the bullet was. There were two problems that stood in the way of that device. Oh, that device worked, and worked really well, by the way. But Bliss would only allow Alexander Graham Bell to use the device on the side of the body where James Garfield was shot. But when you get shot, there's no guarantee where the bullet eventually ends up. I don't know that from personal experience, just saying. So Bell was not allowed to check the other side of his body where the bullet was lodged. The second issue was the interference. James Garfield laid on a bed that had springs, and that affected the signals that the metal detector gave. James Garfield sadly died in September of 1881. He was the second American president to be assassinated after Lincoln. The second one, it was Lincoln, and then it was Garfield. I'm not counting the duels that Andrew Jackson had. I mean, dude was buried with God knows how many bullets in him. I think it was 20. But James Garfield, arguably, with the help and innovation of Alexander Graham Bell, gave birth to metal detecting. And this is an image of the first metal detector. It wasn't called a metal detector at the time. It was called an induction balance. Now, I sure as heck couldn't tell you how Alexander Graham Bell's metal detector worked. Fortunately, Science Online can.
I was surprised to learn that Alexander Graham Bell, in 1881, designed and constructed a functioning metal detector. I say surprised because I have designed and constructed some simple metal detectors, like this one. Modern electronics made the task relatively easy. I couldn't imagine how Bell, with the primitive state of electronics in 1881, created a working metal detector. But incredibly, he did. I investigated his approach using this 19th century diagram of his metal detector. The device uses two overlapping coils, a primary and secondary coil. This component, the interrupter, turns current flow off and on at a high frequency, creating a discernible buzz in the telephone receiver. Note the two coils are not connected. Bell called this configuration an induction balance. Here's how this works. I created two coils by winding 30 turns of 25 gauge enameled wire onto an 8 centimeter diameter cup. The completed coil looks like this. I removed the enamel insulation from each lead with sandpaper. Next, I created a circuit to produce a tone. This is the equivalent of Bell's interrupter. This tone generator is constructed from a common 555 integrated circuit. You can find instructions for building a circuit like this at hylaroad.com/bell. Connecting a speaker to the circuit, we can hear the tone. This confirms that the circuit is working. Pulsing current is flowing through the speaker. I removed the speaker and connected one of the coils in its place. This coil is the primary coil. There is no sound, but the pulsing current is flowing in the coil, creating a pulsing magnetic field. Next, I connected the secondary coil directly to the speaker. Still no sound. But when I bring the two coils together and align them, the tone sounds. Note there is a space between the two coils. The coils are not touching. We are witnessing inductance. The pulsing current in the primary coil produces a pulsing magnetic field that induces current flow in the second coil, creating sound in the speaker. Experimenting with the overlap of the two coils, we can find a location where the tone stops, a null or balanced position. This is Bell's induction balance. Bring a piece of metal close to the coils and the circuit loses balance, becoming unstable and causing a tone in the speaker. Metal has been detected.
So as time elapsed, innovators like Gerhard Fischer patented and created more portable metal detectors. I tried to research the use during World War I, and it seems that there was some. There was a reference to a tube metal detector that was used to locate mines in World War I. But it says right here that the first commercially sold metal detector was sold in 1931, and it was behind Gerhard Fischer, who Fisher Research Labs is named after. But metal detecting didn't go mainstream. I mean, is it mainstream? Until Ken White and Charles Garrett built their companies, White's Electronics and Garrett Electronics. Make that Garrett Metal Detectors. So I'm going to link to an excellent website called mdgear.com in the video description. And it has a history that's going to be linked to as well, of course. And basically, it's a very the history of metal detecting is very tough to research. But this is the closest thing that I could get. Long story short, 1970s, you saw very low frequency metal detectors come into vogue. Until then, metal detectors operated near 100 kilohertz. While the VLF detectors allowed operators to ground balance, tune out the soil mineralization, it couldn't discriminate between metal types. So it was either a beep or it wasn't. Early 1970s, you started to see discrimination come in on the metal detectors. The article goes on to say that the first generation of detectorists really did not like that. It took a while to embrace, but isn't that the truth with any technology? By the 1980s, you had detectors that were able to approximate the depth of a target. The 1990s saw integrated circuits replace most of the transistors in metal detectors, just as transistors had replaced vacuum tubes. The 21st century saw metal detectors go wireless, and to have GPS built directly into metal detectors so that you can start to gather data on where you pulled your best finds so that you could go back to those points. So you might have noticed on my channel and by the name of my website, iratedetectors.com, I rate detectors. And in my searches, I have found the names of 35 to 40 metal detecting companies out there. Competition is a good thing. It raises the bar and it takes us to a higher place. Now let's take a look at some of the innovations that we can expect to see over the next 10 years or so. A startup called Air Metal Detector is on a mission to turn your cell phone into a metal detector. And we're not talking about those lousy cell phone apps. They've already reached their goal. Their goal was $60,000. They got $76,000. And this is what they want to do.
Looking for treasures has always been fun, but available devices are cumbersome, impossible to upgrade, and often hard to use. We created Air Metal Detector that turns your smartphone into a compact, smart, and upgradable professional-level detecting machine. Simply launch the application on your phone and you're ready to go. Air Metal Detector is packed with smart algorithms designed to maximize your chances of finding treasures.
Oh, they mentioned that word with the A, algorithm. White's 3DI and earlier Minelab detectors were the first to merge bands, but it really got sophisticated when the Equinox came out, and you have multiple bands that are tied together by a very smart algorithm.
Not all things are created equal. You know that. New technology, new experiences, new frontiers. And now, you get to master them all. Metal detectors used to work on a single frequency, so you could typically find only a limited range of metals at one time. Small coins, fine jewelry, gold. If you imagine a flashlight that lit up only one color, that's what you'd have. Then, we got better, and switchable multi-frequency detectors came about. You could find different types of treasure, but you needed to know in advance what you were looking for. So we'd have to manually switch our flashlight to different colors before we could find our treasure. Good if you were psychic, but not so handy for the rest of us. But now, we have Minelab's revolutionary multi-IQ technology. Simultaneous multi-frequency detectors that can find any metal in any soil, any time. Our imaginary multi-IQ flashlight now lets us see the entire range of color, every type of metal at one time. That's Minelab's multi-IQ technology. No more digging around in the dark. You've just shone a light on the future.
At the time of this video coming out, September of 2020, you have Garrett, who just released the Apex, which is a multi-frequency detector, and you have Nocta currently in the works, trying to make one to catch up. Now, many of you might have seen that commercial already, and I was debating whether or not to put it in the video, but I think it's important because it is an example of AI getting into metal detecting. When you detect in a place like New York, you get a lot of different targets, and you essentially will have to depend on this algorithm to decide what is the best probability target. That's AI for you. Speaking of Nocta, Nocta is a fascinating company in itself. They have, this is out now, it's called the Invenio, and it essentially allows the human to have a enhanced amount of intelligence on the target by seeing it underneath. So you have an imaging system that they use on top of the detector. And when you combine that, you could get some really powerful stuff. One, you get to see where you have swung before. Two, you get a clue as to the type of target that you can find. And I'm really curious about this detector, but I think that it would not be able to tell the difference between a ring and a coin. I've seen this demo, and the smaller objects are coins. You can't really make out a ring, as far as I know, with the Invenio, but it sure is a promising technology that I would love to see come further, and I can't wait until it does. When there's a groundbreaking technology that comes out, the early adopters to it have the advantage. The first people who had the Equinox, in my opinion, they had a huge, huge advantage. When you go to parks, at least in New York, nine people out of 10 have the Equinox. It's that much of a difference maker. Once there is a multi-band detector with imaging, like the Invenio hints at, that's going to be a game changer right there. Of course, it depends on the price point too. There are also companies that fine-tune old ways of doing things. Notice induction balance right here. Doesn't that bring you back to Alexander Graham Bell? But look at what this baby can do. This is the Nexus MPV2.
Okay.
Found a Roman coin. Guess how deep this is?
Looks like a Roman sesterci, big one. Let me see how big is this.
Break out the ruler.
From
the bottom of the hole where the coin was found. Now, looks like 47 centimeters.
47 centimeters. That's 18 and a half freaking inches. Yeah, I want one too. And that is a old school technology right there. It's all human intuition that gets put into the calculations of all of those dials that you have to be able to understand what they are and execute as a detectorist. Interesting question that I keep coming back to with the Equinox and the AI that it has. Does that cost us depth? Does sensing all of the different targets and the triage that happens with them, does that cost us depth? You know what? Forget depth. Signals. Does it cost us signals or does it enhance? Does it give us a better clue into the signals? I think it's answered by how many people swing the Equinox nowadays, but are you at an advantage if you master another detector while everybody else swings the Equinox? I don't know the answer to that. I'm just throwing that out there. But let's go distant future now. You know, we live in a very interesting time, and over the course of my life, the trades that happen on the stock market, they went from all human to more than 60% computer each day. Back in the early 2000s, it was very popular to put your money in hedge funds, where a individual investor or a group of investors are paid to invest your money for you. They of course got their cut of it. Humans have been essentially eclipsed by the efficiency of computers. When they are well programmed, they do amazing things. Within the next 10 years, it is plausible that driving our cars, that is going to be taken out of our hands and put in the hands of the machine. The Industrial Revolution was not a single event. There have been many, and it has changed the structure of work over time. Jobs have become obsolete, and prices actually go down when something can be produced in mass more efficiently by machines. And then we have Bitcoin, which I'm admittedly still trying to wrap my brain fully around. But the first Bitcoins were mined by computers. And unlike our currency, which, like I said before, is a fiat currency, it is just paper. It's no longer tied, the coins are no longer tied to the gold or silver standard. It is just America is a established country, and we have our established currency, the dollar. The store of value in a Bitcoin lies in what's called the blockchain, which is essentially a log that gets put on thousands, if not tens of thousands of computers around the world that essentially makes it counterfeit proof. If you were to fabricate and say, oh, you had 1,000,000 Bitcoins, which would make you a multi-billionaire, you would have to change that log on the tens of thousands of computers that keep that log around the world. Now, where the hell am I going with this? Human beings, the programmers of computers, they are the ultimate sources of reason in the world, sometimes. But we fatigue, and we have to sleep. Repetitive tasks sometimes bore us, and we're bad at them. Our logic is very often skewed by emotions. We get hangry sometimes, and we say, meh, when we don't like something, or worse than that. Will the world ever see scavenger drones? Drones that can travel to public places and harvest all of the treasure that lies beneath the soil or the sand of these public places. Hey man, if you think that's far-fetched, again, we have Elon Musk planning to take SpaceX to an asteroid to mine that. I think it's a little bit more plausible to do that with Earth. You know, if you think about it, we have Roomba vacuums that essentially clean the floors for us. And it not only does that, but it can park itself right now to recharge itself. We don't even have to plug it in. It's the same concept with iRobot lawnmowers. They can mow the fields, and they can park themselves and recharge as well. For any of us who have purchased a recent model metal detector, what are our operating costs? Do we have operating costs? All of our detectors are rechargeable. There's no battery to dispose of and replace. It's a go. I think that as we move into the future, change is inevitable. There's no question that we are going to have different targets than what we have right now. People are always going to drop something. The coins that we have, they might not last. You know, if we go to all zinc or if we go to cryptocurrencies, yeah, we will definitely have different targets. We have the world's population increasing. We have less farmland. We have less open space as cities continue to grow and as water levels continue to rise. We have rapidly improving technology. With each decade, something becomes more portable. You know, when I was in college, it was music, changing from CDs to MP3. And now it seems to be power sources. There seems to be a power revolution going on. We are automating more, and we're using computers and robots more with each year that passes. We have new material sources, such as growing diamonds. We're able to do that now. And perhaps a few years out, Elon Musk is aiming for 2022 at mining that asteroid. We have changes in people's habits in terms of being outdoors. We have spent more time indoors over the last decade or so. With each treasure pulled from the ground, that's one less treasure than what there was before. We arguably already have the capability for robots to metal detect for us, although I hope to God that does not happen. Despite all of these things, I think that metal detecting has a bright future. Every generation has a different idea of what a norm is and what a treasure is. To me, getting a wheat cent in my change was it was a nice surprise. But if you think about it, for my kids to get that, to find one of those, that is a distant coin. It would be the equivalent of an Indian head penny to me. Whereas my grandparents, it was a norm for them to get Indian head pennies in their change. One thing is for sure, we will always drop. We will always, I'm not talking about dying, we're not, yes, that too, but I mean, we drop cool stuff, okay? And very often that is left buried under the ground. And one of the things that I love about metal detecting is unearthing something that has not seen light for hundreds of years. When you get the opportunity to do that, it is a rush. I will close this video by saying there could be new frontiers on the horizon. Mars, Mars X, you know, we sure are studying it now. And we are at the precipice of spaceflight, privatized spaceflight. And if we ever go to Mars, that is even more ground that humans have to drop. And maybe we'll find some Martian stuff. How cool would that be? It seems that there is always a give and a take, you know, a technology that comes, but there's always a replacement. There's always going to be tangible history, no matter what happens, no matter if Bitcoin rises, no matter what. And those of us who have like minds, like you who is watching this video, we'll be there to dig it up. Hope you enjoyed this. If you've watched this long, hit that subscribe button. Thank you, everybody.